Well, welcome to another edition of CGS Live, VFX Special. My name's Daniel Hourigan, and I'm the head of effects at CG Spectrum. And yeah, today we're going to keep going with the tidal wave that I was working on last week. Hello, everybody. Let me know if you're watching. So yeah, we're just going to continue on this week working on the tidal wave that I started last week. This is all just freeform stuff as well. This is not like I kind of plan these things out. I just sort of make a lot of it up as I go. So you know, sometimes you'll see me fumbling around and trying to work things out, and that's why, because I am. This is just an example of how I kind of work when I'm actually at work, trying to figure out problems and solving things in Houdini. So let's jump in. I hope everyone's had a good weekend. Maybe it's still the weekend where you are. And yeah, hope everybody's doing well. So, hey Audrey, how's it going? Somebody's out there. Hey Hardik, how you going? Sorry Hardik, I just saw your message on LinkedIn. I just replied. I was away this weekend. Hey Rizwan. I went camping or caravanning. Took my teardrop caravan for the very first maiden voyage, which was a bit of fun. Yes. It's always a bit hard for me to know if anyone's out there. I do get like a little counter of people, but I'm not sure it's entirely accurate. So I cheated a little bit, and after the stream last week, I did a little bit of work on this file. Yes, I did have fun. It was great. Thank you. It was pretty cold. It's winter here, so it was pretty freezing, but it was nice and toasty inside the caravan, which was good. Hey, that's good, Rizwan. Glad to hear. So yeah, I did a bit of work after the stream last week, and I wanted to kind of talk through the things that I did and just sort of catch you up to where I got to. Because it's hard to kind of do everything in these 2-hour sessions. It's, it helps to kind of just get a little bit ahead before the next one. Otherwise, it'd be like a 20-part series. I'm in Melbourne, Victoria, in Australia, Rizwan. It's not doesn't get super freezing here, but like it does get down to around 0 sometimes. We were sort of near the Alpine kind of region, so it was pretty hilly and it gets pretty cold up there. But it didn't snow, which was good. So let me bring over this file and I'll show you so you can see. I got up to version 17. I was at version 13 last stream, and I got up to version 17. And this was just like a couple hours work, I think, after the stream. But basically what I was doing was having a look at what we had. Wow, it got so cold. You got a nosebleed. That's horrible. That sounds really cold. So what we kind of had was this sort of, these particles spraying out, and I refined that a little bit. So if we have a look at the one that we started with, so this is where we got to last stream, you can see that, I think over here's the pink sort of spray, here's the little streamer kind of guys. So we got that one, and they're sort of spraying out, kind of like missile trails, like a really, I guess, sort of tendrily splash. They're spraying out like that. And then we have this kind of cloud, more sort of dispersed, misty stuff. So I've still got that, but I kind of refined the motion of those a little bit. So here you can see the tendrils, and I also have a lot more. So I just upped the number. So I think probably, what did I do? I upped the scatter a lot as well. And the other thing that I did is I increased the distance threshold. So this is the transfer from the wave, if you don't remember. Yes, it is 10 o'clock in the morning, Rizwan, on Monday. Where are you, Rizwan? What time is it for you? Hey, Michael, how's it going? So yeah, I increased the distance threshold of this transfer from the wave to the points on the buildings. And I also added more buildings, I think. Previously, we were just working on the one building here. So I added a couple of others in, just based on this test building selection. So just trying to increase the amount, increase the amount that we're dealing with, just so I can see this on on more than one building. Makes it a bit easier to see what's going on. Alabama. Oh, cool. So it must be Sunday there for you. Sunday night. All right, so yeah, that's kind of all that I did there. I was still blasting it. Let's see, what am I doing here? Here I'm setting a random velocity. I can't remember if I was doing that last time. Just giving a bit of random vectors to those, then a curl noise from the point velocity. And that's going into this one, which is the streamer sim. And you can see I've got a lot more now. So that's kind of cool. It's giving me like a nice sort of splashy look. Hey, Robert, how's it going? What is happening? That is a photograph. There's a photograph in the background. This is a HDRI for the light, which I can turn off. Yeah, it was good. Thanks, Robert. Camping or caravanning. Went away with, I don't know if you guys know what Airstreams are. Like the shiny aluminium caravans from America. We went away with the Airstream Club because my brother and sister-in-law have an Airstream and they invited us with our little teardrop caravan, and it was fun. They're really cool caravans, those Airstreams. Very expensive though. So this one's pretty much the same. I didn't really change this one. This one's just the misty stuff. So we combine those together. But what I did after this one here, because what you'll see is they kind of just go behind the wave. There's no collider for the wave. Because we're faking all this wave stuff, it's not flip. It's kind of just going through. We don't have a collision for the wave. And I did try doing a collision for the wave, I believe. You can see it there. Oh, that's actually a building collider. But I think here is probably their wave collider. But it's really, really slow. So I turned it off. And what I'm doing here is I grabbed the wave, I took a bound from it, and I just kept the back face of that bound and remeshed it and rayed it onto the wave. And what that gives me, the reason I did that is because the wave has this little lip on it, this curl. And if I go straight into the extrude volume, like this, I get this kind of business happening. And I don't want that. I want to preserve that under the wave stuff. So by raying from behind, it's just straight onto the wave. I think I just set the direction on the ray instead of using normal. So I just set the direction -1. Oh, I just noticed I've frozen. The old freezing camera. I can switch to camera 2. So yeah, if I just ray in a direction towards the wave, then I don't get that lip thing happening. And you can see that some of the wave hasn't, some of this grid hasn't attached, and that's fine. I'm just going to extrude back from that now to create this kind of volume behind the wave. And what I'm using that for is to select all of these points that happen to be beyond the wave. So as the wave goes through, they kind of get grouped. And then I'm just raying them back. I love using a ray, it's great. I'm just raying them back on to the wave. So they kind of look like they get picked up by the wave and, you know, pushed along, which is cool. If the polar ice caps melt, how big would that wave be? I don't know. That is a philosophy question that I do not know the answer to. Pretty big, I imagine. Maybe this big. This is pretty big. It's the size of a skyscraper, so it's a pretty big building, pretty big wave. You can see I haven't done it for the misty stuff. I could also group this like this and just blast anything that goes away, goes behind, just for kind of efficiency. So, you know, you can see There, I could do that. And then I just get everything that's in front of the wave. Now, here, I've got a little time shift because when I was looking at this and having a look at it through the buildings, so there's a whole bunch of junk going on down here. When I was comparing this to the building, so if where's my building? Just template that. And maybe template my wave as well. What I kind of felt was that it was lagging behind a little bit. So we were sort of seeing the stuff coming through a little bit late. So by adding a little time shift there, I get things just moving forwards slightly, just 2 frames. And you can see how it sort of just increases the amount of splash that I get now coming out, because I'm just looking 2 frames ahead in that simulation. So sometimes that can be a good thing to do when you have animation driving an effect, is maybe offset it. I could potentially also just offset my original wave, move that forwards 2 frames, and that would have the same effect. And then I wouldn't be having to simulate 2 extra frames. But yeah, I just thought that that helped. That helped read things coming through and out of the building a little bit better. I also don't have a building collider in here at the moment, because any collision is going to just take time. So what am I doing here? I've got my group. So this is the group that I created here. Group 1. Could probably give it a better name, but that's all of the points that are stuck to the back of the wave there. So you can see them there. And what I'm doing with that is, remember last week I showed you this attribute blur trick, where if you turn off pin border points, set the influence type to proximity, it does this kind of point cloud blurring, and it gives some really nice, interesting shapes, which I think look kind of foamy. So I think that kind of just, takes it from a bit of a mess of points to something that's a little bit more interesting. So I think that's kind of cool, just a nice little thing to try. And then I've also taken the other side, which is all the other points, and done the same thing, because I think this gives some really nice fluid-like shapes. And because we are just using pops for this stuff, we're not really getting some of those stringy tendrils that you tend to get with flip. So I thought this was a nice little way of getting some of that detail. You can see some of these look really fluidy and flip-like. So, we can play with the amount of blur that we do on that. But I thought that was a cool little thing. And I'm not doing that, I'm doing it to everything, but then I'm merging it back in with everything else. So that's like an additional layer that I have. And over here, I've got my point jitters. So I think I was doing this last week as well. So here's where I am taking the age and life, running it through a ramp, and setting p-scale based on the age and life. I think I was doing that last time. Let me just double check. No, I wasn't. Okay. So the point jitters, they're sort of very everywhere, but you do have this ability to turn on use p-scale. So what you can do with that is drive the amount of jitter based on the scale of the particle, or the p-scale that you set. So in here, I've taken the age and life of the particle divided by themselves, so divided age by life. That gives me a normalized age, so a 0 to 1 value across the life of the particle. Run that through a ramp here, color ramp, and then I just split off one of those vectors. Because it's a color, it has 3 components, so I just need a single component for most attributes. P-scale is just a float, so that's just one component of the color. And then I run that through a fit to actually set the value of the p-scale. And what that allows me to do is to set a really small p-scale right at the start of the particle's life, and then have a larger p-scale as the particle ages. And what that gives me, if I play with this, let me just clone this for a second. What that gives me is the ability to control how much jittering is taking place. So if I view the jitter and adjust my ramp, you can see how I bring this white up and down, it changes the amount of jittering that I'm getting. So I can get actually jittering right up to the front, or I can have that black come out and keep that as it was, and then jitter as they age. So that can be a good way of getting that kind of spreading out type effect. So yeah, I think that kind of worked pretty well. Let me just adjust that back. So I've got a couple of point jitters doing different levels of scale, and each one has a different seed, so they give a slightly different jittering effect. So that's important to always, when something has a seed, it's usually using a random function, so you want to give it a different seed so it has a different effect. So I merge all those together with the original as well, and then I merge those two components, so the foam that was rayed onto the surface of the wave, the points that have been blurred together to give that fluid look, and then I just merge it all together again. So I end up with this nice kind of combination of things, whereas what I started with was just these two things. So just layering, and you can see here I've got, what have I got? 249,000 points. Can't see that, it's on the other screen. 249,000 points, and then after all this merging business, I've got 2 million points. So it's increased a lot. That's good. Oh, and there's another thing coming in here. So there's another popnet that I did. And this one is kind of the same, but what I did was I was looking at this and thinking everything's very forward. You know, the wave's coming on and it's all just moving very forwards with the wave. But really what would happen if water hit an obstacle is that it would also splash, it would hit and splash backwards. So I wanted to create that type of effect as well. So I've got the same thing. I've got my isolated points off my building. And here I'm actually reversing the velocities. So if we have a look, what we had before was this first line in my vex is reversing the velocities, so flipping them. And then I'm also adding the normals. So what that gives me, if you have a look at these points, if I turn off velocity and have a look at the normals are inherited from the building. So they're all just pointing in the direction that the building faces were pointing. So by adding the normals to the velocity, and I've also multiplied those up, it gives a little bit of the direction that the face of the building was pointing. So if I was to just say VFX equals, you can see how that just gives me the sort of building direction. So that'll just shoot things out in the direction that the building face was pointing. But by adding that, I can sort of add a bit of that in rather than completely resetting it. So you can see if I comment that out, the difference that it makes. It's not huge, but it does give me a bit of spread to the velocities. And then what else am I doing? Oh, here I'm just randomizing the velocity on each point. So I've got a fit01 running through a rand, so that's giving me a random value per point. And then I'm just setting that to between 0.1 and 2, so that some get multiplied right down and some get multiplied up. So you can see, if I zoom out so you can see the tips of those trails, you'll see how it just extends a lot of it, but it will also be shrinking them too. It all helps add to the randomness, and then a further addition to the randomness is to add curl noise, and that's just gonna, that's just gonna help as well. So, and then look what I did here. I removed quite a lot of the particles. Random question, Hardik, unrelated. But what is ACES? Well, ACES is a color like look table, a way of working with color that, I don't know, it's a bit more of a kind of open range, I guess. I don't actually use it because, I like to keep everything as vanilla as possible. But, they do use it in studios, and, we usually try to apply some sort of color grade to our work when we're working in film. So usually what will happen is you'll be supplied a lookup table, or it's called a LUT, lookup table. And ACES is a kind of similar way of working, where you have this kind of, I guess it's like a preset kind of grade that you apply to everything. But studios certainly use it. They also use lots of other different types of color profiles. But ACES does seem to be a good one, and it's sort of, I guess they're trying to it's trying to be like a widely adopted one, so that if you send something between studios or you get something and someone's working in Aces, then you know how to work with it, and it just all kind of works. I've been meaning to try it out to see what sort of difference it creates, because certainly with fire, it seems like it makes a big difference to the look of the fire. But I'm so used to working without it that, you know, I just kind of, I feel like it would change the way that I know how to shade and grade things. So I kind of I don't use it at home anyway. So yeah, you can see here what I'm doing in this attribute wrangle is a great one that I really like to do when I want to reduce the amount of points. So here I've got a ton of points, 51,000. Afterwards, I've only got 2,000. So I'm doing a random on the PT num. I'm comparing it to a channel that I have here, and then if the number of the random point is greater than the threshold, it will be removed. So what you can see happens is when I have it at 1, nothing gets removed because nothing random only generates points between 0 to 1. So, or point values between 0 to 1. So there is nothing greater than 1, so nothing gets removed. But then as I go down, more and more of those points have a greater than 0.01 value, so they do get removed. So you can go to 0 and everything is greater than 0. Or there might be like 1 point that has 0. In this case, it doesn't look like it. So everything gets removed. And so you create this kind of percentage-based removal where, you know, 0.1 would essentially be around 10% of the points. So I don't know what I had before. I think it was 0.0 something. 0.05. There we go. So it's a really good way of just removing a percentage. And then let's run this popnet. See what we get. So we should get particles flying the other way. And you can see there's a lot. So I think I really cranked up the oh no, I'm just using impulse with this one. So I'm just emitting points every single step. Do I have substeps here? Yeah, I got a lot of substeps as well. So I'm actually emitting points every kind of substep, which is going to end up with a lot of points. So this is probably the sort of thing that you should cache out, because it is relatively slow. But you can see we're ending up with a ton of points. And what that's going to give me when I combine it with everything else is that sort of, we've got that forward stuff, but we've also got this stuff spraying backwards. So if we have a look, template our original wave, you see a lot of it is behind the wave now, this stuff especially, but this stuff up here, you see we get like this nice kind of backwards stuff going on. So let's go down, and then we've still got our density stuff that we did last week. Haven't changed anything there, just setting density, converting it all to volumes. Got 2 volumes. One is kind of a broader one and one is a tighter one. And I'm also setting the p-scale again, because if you remember, I did set the p-scale on this VOP here, but that was purely to set the jittering of the points. So yeah, I want to get rid of that, because for rendering I need to set a different p-scale, which is really, really small. So I want these to be really fine. So do that. And then over here, I've done something interesting, and I'll just kind of gotta love the spam comments. So what I was thinking with this wave is, because it is just a mesh, it needs more to it to make it look realistic. And I've tried here with the ray to kind of make that foamy stuff on the surface, which I think is cool, but we need it you kind of want that everywhere. So what I've done is frozen the wave here and scattered some points on it. So let me kind of recreate this. So what I did was I scattered points. I'm going to turn off relax and just give it a lot of points. Let's go 100,000. And then I'm going to scatter some more points. But with this one, I'm going to only scatter, let's say 1,000. And I could leave relax on for that or turn it off. I don't know, let's see. In a point VOP, I'm essentially going to create the same thing that's happening in the attribute blur here with, that sort of smoothing effect that I was showing you. But I'll do it by using a point cloud. So I'm going to do point cloud open. And I'm going to grab the position of these points, the sparser amount of points, and I'm going to sort of blend the position of these points to the position of these points. You'll see what happens. So the point cloud is going to hook up P to P. File goes into input 2, so that means we're going to grab the position or the point cloud. We're going to open the point cloud from this input. And I think that's all we need to hook up. Now we're going to filter the P position. And filter is kind of like a blur type effect. And then we're just going to plug in to P. So let's have a look at the result. Need to change maybe our search radius. Ah, there we go. Oh, here we go. So you can see when the search radius is really small, we just get points sort of sticking to where those original point positions were, and probably a lot of points at world 0 because they haven't actually found a neighbor. So basically what it's doing is looking for a point nearby, and if it doesn't find one, it just sets it to 0. But as I increase this, you can see, and as I get really far, you can see they move away from 0, and I get this really interesting kind of effect where, let me turn this off, they sort of start to create this interesting cellular pattern as they blur or blend to that position. And what I thought was this would be a really cool way of making that sort of surface foam that you get on the ocean, which does tend to take that sort of noisy cellular pattern. So by changing, maybe I'll turn off relax and then just play with these kind of values. Hey, David, you made it. How's it going? So by changing the number of points, I can kind of create these really interesting patterns using this point cloud. So let's see. Do something like that. And also I can change the number of these points to create these patterns too. So let's have a look at the one that I created. So I did start with quite a lot of points on the small side and then quite a lot on the big side as well. And I end up with this. Then, by attribute blurring, it does that additional sort of smoothing. So it's like kind of running 2 of these, I guess you could kind of do it. But it gives me that nice round shape when I do that. So I thought that looked pretty cool. Then merge is doing nothing. Here I'm just adding a noise, and that noise actually looks a little bit kind of, I guess, looks like it's all going in one direction. I might be adding a one-dimensional noise here. Yeah, I am. So I could add a 3D noise instead. Let's just leave it as one-dimensional because it might be important. So you can see what that's doing is just creating an offset. And then I'm just merging them back together. So that's just giving me like a little bit of an extra bit of foam with noise on it to create the kind of chaos, I guess. Now this is all happening on a static version of the wave, frozen at frame 39. To get those points back on, I'm just using a point deform. So the point deform is going to take my static position and my animated position, so it's animated at this point, and then my points go into the first input, and that is then going to transform those points. So if we have a look through the camera, we get this kind of thing happening, which is pretty cool. Now the noise that's happening here is kind of shifting everything off the wave. So if we have a look at our original wave, it's kind of shifted everything off. So again, ray, everything back, just set to minimum distance, and that will just snap it to the closest location. So you can see get everything pulled back together. And then it's moving now because of the point deform. So we get this kind of nice stuff happening on the surface. Attribute transfer, I'm just adding velocity back. So that will be useful for motion blur. So I've just transferred that back from the original wave. Merge is doing nothing again. And there's my, so that's the end. That's the sort of surface foam. So if we have a look, let's jump out, and I've created here a renderable object for that. So I'm just merging that out and setting p-scale. And then you can kind of see it there. So there's my sort of surface look. And, you know, it's going to be a lot more subtle than what it is here. But you can see it kind of gives it that water, ocean, foam look. And because it's deforming with the point deform, it looks quite cool. It looks like it's getting pulled up with the wave, which is really cool. Yeah, it's a really good trick to to create that look on the surface of an ocean. I find a lot of the ways that I've seen in tutorials and stuff for how to do the kind of foamy look on oceans, they tend to just not quite look detailed enough, I think. And so using points is a really good way of kind of doing that. So that just adds that extra bit, I think. So building spray, rendering wise, we're just rendering all those points from the flips, from the pop sim. So we've got tons of stuff now, tons of points. We've got this stuff behind as well, which arguably we could cull, but that's okay. Then we've got our foam, so 2 layers of foam. We've got our thin stuff and our thicker stuff, and then let's have a look. So I'm gonna just save that. Now we're kind of caught up to where I was kind of at. Let me play through a little further, and we'll talk about some other techniques that we can, what we can add in next. And maybe we should try adding a collision to these buildings. It might kind of help. I also do want to do like a destruction on the building, so it might be a good time to just add a very simple RBD to the buildings and just see what that adds, because that will change everything that we have so far. So you can see like this foam adds a lot, even in the viewport, adds a lot to the kind of look. Let's just do a quick render and see what this is looking like. So we've got mantra, camera 5, turn that off, hit render. It's telling me my license is about to expire. And let's see, hopefully it won't take too long to render. I added the HDRI in as background as well, I think. Just turned render light geometry on, so that gives me something other than black behind, which helps me read those points and the volumes a little clearer as well. So you can see that foamy stuff coming through now. A little bit slow. Do I ever use the shelf tools to do an ocean? Yeah, look, not loads, but occasionally. It depends. Depends what I want to do. I mean, with Houdini and the things that I do, there are occasionally things that I haven't done a lot of. So I will sometimes put down a shelf tool and just have a look at what, what are the components that they're using. I really don't like the way that shelf tools put things down and create the auto dot network at the top level. So I usually will work out what's important, what's necessary, and then rebuild it myself. Sometimes I'll just have an additional Houdini open if I want to do a shelf tool, because clicking shelf tools when you've already got things in your scene is just a nightmare. And it'll put a flip ocean inside like an RBD sim or something. Like if there's a dot net, it'll insert it. So I usually do it in a completely different Houdini, so it won't screw up anything that I've got. But yeah, look, sometimes I do. Sometimes I'm struggling with something and I'll go, how have they done it? And have a look. And then try and work backwards. Things like the hair, vellum hair and fur stuff, that's certainly something that I'm, might just have a look at how they've done it or look at an example file. But yeah, I tend to avoid the Shoff tools just because of that issue of how they kind of dump things where I don't want them to be and put them in a way that I don't like working. So yeah, but it's fine. Yeah, it's fine to do it. So I guess maybe before we do the destruction, we should probably look at this wave here, because that's one thing that's really lacking, is this edge of the wave really does need some foam on it. There should be foam and cresting sort of stuff happening from this all the way along. So this is really cool though. I love the way that this is looking. I think that's looking really nice and organic. This stuff arguably could be a little denser maybe, or just have more particles. Some of these look a little bit too linear and stringy, tendrily. So I think that's something that I'll probably refine, but getting that in there will also help sort of tie everything together a little bit. So let's see. I'm going to... Oh, I don't want to do it all in the building spray node. So what I'm going to do is grab some stuff from here. I'm just going to grab the outwave here. Actually, yeah, I'll just grab that. That'll be right. And jump into a new geometry container. And I'll call this wave crest. Hit stop on the render. And okay, that's pretty cool. Let's take a snapshot of that. Jump out. So there's our wave. Now, let's just have a look and see if we... We did have a top edge group here that I was creating from that bound. So that is going to be useful, I think. So let's have a look. We've got our wave crest, middle click, we can see we've got bottom edge and top edge. So what am I going to do? Let's color this black. And I'm going to color, maybe just blast my top edge away. Delete non-selected. There we go. Get a bunch of points. Gonna color that red. Attribute transfer. Whoops. To from. I literally use attribute transfer for just about every single effect, but you can see what I can do there is create a fall off from the end backwards, which is great. So that'll give me a nice little gradient, which I can run into a point vault. If I run that color through a ramp, so do a vector float, run that through a grayscale ramp, back into color. Now I have this. Let me just turn off lights, materials, D, background, there we go. So you can see now I can sort of control this via a ramp, which is really cool. Because I've done just a blend, I haven't done distance threshold, so it's just blending that on, which means that the value is going to get less and less as it travels. So that gives me a gradient then that I can change and mess with. I could also put an attribute blur on that to make that a bit smoother, that blend of the CD. You can see how that just smooths it out and blurs it a little bit. That gives a fall off. There we go. So that's great. Now what I might combine that with is a little bit of noise. So let's do a turbulent noise. And what am I going to do? Multiply maybe. Hey, there we go. Now, what I can do with this noise, if I mess with the frequency, must be this way. No, this way. If I take this frequency down and take this frequency up, you can see I get this kind of stretching effect. So I get these nice kind of streaky lines. If I put a fit after that, just crush it. Get those nice kind of lines happening. And then can always adjust this, come back. Probably just leave it like that. I think that's looking kind of cool. I could increase my roughness. And so I could scatter here based on the color. So let's turn off relax. Density. Oops, cancel. CD. Crank that up. You can see I get, I mean already that could be a nice element just to have on the top of the wave there. You'll see that just kind of comes over and kind of looks okay. It's foamy, but that's going to be my kind of emission source. So I probably maybe want it to be a little tighter. Yeah, maybe even a bit kind of sparser as well, so it's a bit more random, a bit more organic. And it's going to change because this wave is just moving through this noise pattern. It's just going to change dynamically as the wave moves. So that's kind of cool, you know. I think I don't have a rest position, so it might be a good idea to create a rest position way back at the wave creation, but that's okay. Let's see how it goes for now. So let's just go popnet. And this one is going to need to start at frame 1, frame 0. Turn off my guide display. Birth, so source would be from points. So we can drive it by a rate. So let's just hit play. And you can see it's just dragging particles with it. They do have a velocity, so yeah, there is a velocity there. So what I'm going to do though is put a pop force. Let's see, pop force, and I want to blow them back off the top of the wave. So I'm going to have a bit of upward and a bit of X positive. Just looking at the gnomon down here, so I want them to blow back this way. I might just turn down or off the velocity for now. Okay, so actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to just delete the velocity that's on there. There we go, and start again. So, whoa. Let's just do v at v equals 0, 1, 0. So I'm just going to set an upward, actually maybe diagonally the same direction that I was trying before. So just upward and back direction. Because we want this to kind of be like a streaming behind type effect. And need to turn that on. There we go. Possibly needs to be a little faster. Maybe I'll turn this one off now. And let's see, maybe we just need to crank it up a lot. Oh, there we go. So that's probably too much. Let's set a negative gravity here, and that'll stop them from flying away. Also, these will kind of just sort of fly behind the wave, and then we won't see them. So it's not even necessary maybe to have such a high life expectancy. Let's have a look. Let's go like 0.2 0.25 or something. There you go. So they're dying pretty quick. Let's have a look from the camera, and we'll combine it with our wave to see what it looks like kind of going behind. So all the way back up here. So you can see, yeah, there you go. So, well, they need to fall down more, but they're kind of doing the right thing. So let's just go minus 9.8, so just set the gravity. And maybe I'll take that one off for now. Let's just use this one as gravity, and then turn this down a little bit. Increase the life slightly, 0.5, 0.2 in variance. Okay, so you can see the gravity's probably a little too strong now, but let's have a look. Yeah, so they're falling right down. We're not really seeing that streaming, so let's just reduce that. Let's go -4. Okay. Probably still a little too much. Let's see, what can we do? Guess we could up our Y vector. Hit play. And probably a good idea to add some variance just so that we get, you know, a bit more of just a fuzzy spray. Let's have a look. There we go. It's kind of getting there. We'll let it roll and see what happens as it goes on. Not too bad. I think jittering forwards would be a good thing here. So on the source, birth, let's jitter. We are jittering forwards, positive, forwards, interpolate source forwards, match topology, use point velocity. No, I don't think I want that. I guess, you know, one thing that we could do there is just shift the timing. That's, you know, that's one reason why I did that on the other thing, is just shift it forwards one frame. That might work. Let's see, what do I want to do? I'm going to increase the amount now. Let's go 50,000. Get a really dense amount of particles going. And I think it's a good idea just to view it always with the wave so that we can see that sort of look. And this is just one component. Again, we're going to have to layer up multiple components here to create the look. You can see this is giving us the kind of streaming off particle look. It looks kind of funny, you know, when you zoom around it, but this combined with another, you know, layer or another couple of layers will hopefully look pretty good. So yeah, maybe the variance is a little too much. I don't know. It's hard to kind of tell. Let's go with that. And let's now, maybe I'll just duplicate this whole stream here. And this is quite often what I'll do, is just duplicate things like this and just create a variance, change this noise maybe. You know, this noise I'm crushing a lot, so it's very sort of sparse. Now let's have one which is a bit less than that. And maybe the ramp on this one as well could just be doing the real end, like that. Scatter a whole bunch of points on that. And let's see what this one looks like. We'll merge that in. It's also a good idea when you're combining multiple ones just to give them different colors so that you can see what one is what. So that one, it has all the same velocities and the same force, so it's going to kind of occupy the same space, so we'll change that as well. And maybe that one, we could just use the original velocity. Let's try and see what that original velocity looks like on these pink ones. You can see, because the original velocity of the wave is pushing forward, that's giving us a lot more kind of spray outwards. So let's change that. Take that down. Let's just turn the variance down. maybe set it to like a quarter. And gravity's a bit strong for that one, I think. Yeah, maybe, what will I do? Let's see, maybe I'll up the variance on that one. Just up that slightly as well. Gravity, turn that down. Maybe just -1 and 0.5 in X, so it's kind of blowing backwards a little bit as well. All right, let's see what that looks like. So you can see how having the different colors is great for visualization, so you can really tell, you know, what particle system is doing what. All right, so we probably need a lot more particles. When we render that, we're going to make these pretty small, but it's always a good idea to check, you know, check your rendering. So let's go, and I'm just going to go and steal something here from one of my other systems. So wait for these to catch up. Okay. Wow, what's that? Wave. So I'm just going to go down here and grab these. Paste them in there. That's a good thing about, you know, doing something once. You can just go and copy it, and then we'll render that. So we'll add that to the mantra node objects. We'll add wave crest. Accept. Render. Oh, let me just make sure that's got a material on it. So this one has wave foam material, which is just a principled shader. And I might, just for testing, I might just create a second mantra node and just test the wave crest and the wave. And let me just make sure that I changed my view flag in here. So I'm just going to set a render flag, control click on that null, so it always renders from the correct spot. Alright, so let's change this to mantra 2, camera 5, render. We'll just test that one by itself. Everybody's so quiet today. Is there anybody still there? So you can see really sparse amount of points. So I need to up that point count a lot. So let's do that. I mean, I could increase the P scale, but it's good to have a really small P scale for reality. You know, the scale of this wave is huge, so we want those points to be quite small. So let's go and increase this one. Let's go 100,000 on that, maybe more. 500,000. You're still there, Audrey. Thanks. Alright, so, you know, that's a bit denser amount of points. Oh, cool. Nice. Hey, that's all right. You guys don't have to say anything. I was just joking. Let's see. Play. How's the course going, David? All right, let's see how many points I have there. Only 99,000, so I'm gonna crank that up. Let's go 1,000,000. Why not? Go crazy. Finish my coffee, now I'm gonna switch to my tea. Look at my nice new CG Spectrum mug. Alright, that looks like a lot of points. 500,000. Yeah, it's still not that many, but we can do some replication stuff with point jitters and, you know, all that kind of, all that jazz. What frame was that? That was frame 55. Let's go to frame 55. Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, I haven't really played with Substance. It's not really something I need to do, but it's cool. I've seen lots of people do great things with it. Yeah, that's good. I think it's always good to you know, leave some room for interpretation or room for people to just work things out on their own. It's not, I don't know, not all people can work that way, but yeah, I think it's good to kind of, you know, let people figure things out as well. It's all part of this, you know. Once you kind of move away from the learning phase of this stuff, you do have to figure things out, and there's not, you know, there's not a tutorial for everything. So you certainly, you know, you do need to learn how to figure things out on your own, which is great. Yeah, I don't know, Michael. I think we have a merch store. I'm not actually sure, but we are giving away merch as prizes for various things. I don't know if you're entering the rookies, or anyone out there is entering the rookies, but if you're a CG Spectrum student anyway, we're doing like another competition just to encourage people to enter, where you can win some cool stuff, Houdini indie licenses and whatnot. So yeah, check that out, Michael. You should enter. Yeah, that's good, David. I think, look, 99% of, you know, working in Houdini is just problem solving and trying to figure out why something's not working, or, you know, yeah, or just trying to figure something out. You know, it's a lot of problem solving, so it's really good to learn, you know, how to do that and how to do it well, how to do it efficiently, and what, you know, what are the common things to look for, and that just comes with practice. Oh, cool, Michael. That's great. Glad you created one. Do it. You can win some fabulous prizes. Houdini indie license is awesome. I want a free indie license. I think there's some cool assets as well. Some kit bash or like destruction ready Houdini assets, which would be great. So yeah, it's still not quite dense enough. I think let's try this. If I put a time shift down and just do $F +1, shift it forward 1 frame, that will just push it 1 frame beyond and actually pushes it ahead of the wave. And that, you can see, that actually does a pretty good job of masking that edge of the wave too. So I think that's pretty cool, you know, way of just solving that problem. You do have to be careful that you don't push too far ahead. We may be able to do 2 frames. Might be a little bit crazy, but you can see the more I push ahead with that, the more it will hide that mesh edge, which is cool. Now I'm going to try my my little blur technique after this as well, and see if I can get some little flip kind of you know, stringy bits. You bought an indie license, so you keep using Redshift. Yeah, that's always the problem. They get you hooked on Redshift, and then you have to keep buying indie. But I guess if you've already got one, you can maybe delay the purchasing of it until next time you need it. I don't know. because the indie license only lasts a year, right? So it will expire. Or I think you can just choose something else as well. I think there's like a monitor or something which would be good. My monitors, I looked up the other day, my monitors are like 9 years old or something. I could do with some new monitors. Not that I can enter, but boy can dream. Alright, so yeah, it's looking okay. It's not looking great. It's a little bit fuzzy and kind of just there. So I'm going to have a look at what I can do. Let's take these for a start and attribute blur the position of these. Probably need to create another element as well, but let's just see what, you know, what we can do blurring these points. You can see when I do that, I get some interesting kind of blobby shapes. Which is kind of cool. It just reins in a lot of that fuzz. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. Let's combine that. Let's try it on the other side as well and see what that looks like. What's that going to give me? Probably not quite as good on this side. There's probably just maybe too many particles. What if I... Yeah. Oh, blurring iterations. Should try that. Maybe? Don't know. It might be good just to combine that in and just see, you know, kind of what that looks like. At least it'll add these kind of, you can see how it adds those little clumpy bits, which might just be, you know, an additional element that looks cool. I think probably what I'll do is create another pop sim. But what I could also do with these more clumpy ones is just give a slightly higher, so I'll move this attribute wrangle and do it per stream now, and just give these a slightly higher p scale. So what I'll do, what I'll do is just, I'll set the wrangle before the attribute blur splits it off, and then on this attribute wrangle, all I need to do is just go at p scale times equals 2. Oh, you bought a 2 year. Wow. Fancy. Yeah, that's cool. I probably would too. I think it makes sense. It's cheaper to buy a 2 year. So yeah, now I can just multiply up these ones by 2 and they'll be slightly thicker. So when I render those, they might look a bit more like clumps. Let's see what that looks like. Take a snapshot. Render. You know, I say it every week, but it is just all about layering and, you know, just adding. I think, you know, I've had effects where I've had like 20 different particle layers just to create the kind of effect. You can see it already. That kind of, those clumpy shapes. Just, they're thicker and they're, you know, they're more strandy and less blurry and less fuzzy. So they kind of look more like a fluid. Now this is a bit weird under here, and I think that's from my material, maybe? I have to have a look. I think on my material, my waveform, I have emission intensity. So what you'll see, if I take that down to 0, is that this stuff renders black under the wave. Maybe that's better. But overall it does drop the brightness of everything. Maybe it's better to have that. I don't know. Maybe I'll just do a little bit. 0.1. I just, in shadow, it just does not look very good. So, whoops. Yeah, maybe I'll turn it off. I think I like it better without it. The other thing that I could do there is on my light. I only have one light. I've got shadow, and I could take the intensity of the shadow down, but it will affect everything. You can see it looks a little bit better though. It doesn't do the flat kind of grey. But yeah, it will affect the shadows on everything when I do that. So, you know, we could create a completely separate light just for the foam. Sometimes that's something that I'll do. Yeah, so I think that's looking pretty cool. You know, we're pretty low quality settings still, so the detail on these is pretty, you know, we're not getting everything out of these points because they're so fine. But I think that is working pretty cool. Let's do the same thing with our foam that we did on the other thing too. So I'm going to Wrangle and create density. So density equals 1. Just going to hit stop on that. Volume rasterize attributes. I could have stolen this from the other setup, but it's pretty easy to do. Just going to hit save. And I'm going to rasterize density. There we go. Voxel size. What's that res? 185,000. That's not very much. Can't remember what the other one was. 3 million. That should be alright. So we can crank up the particle scale if we want, or we could set our own particle scale. Okay, so let's just go null. Out, foam, out, crest, foam, volume. And then I'll just duplicate this spray foam here, and I'll call this one crest foam, because this has the material set up, and it should just be an object merge, and then I can just change that to wave crest, out crest foam volume, boom. Alright, wave crest. I'll just create a null here as well, and this can be my render. Out render, control click, set a render flag, and let's add that to our little test here. Wave crest foam, there we go. Now, I'm not looking at reference for this stuff, although I have looked at it in the week, but you should always be looking at reference when you're doing this, and I should be too, but I don't like to have the internet open while I'm doing these streams because it does seem to cause sound problems. So yeah, you should always be looking at reference for this stuff and just checking and making sure and seeing, you know, how your stuff matches, and just trying to really work out, you know, where you need to add detail or where you need to change the way that something looks based on something real. And make sure it's real as well. Don't, you know, I mean, it's fine to look at movies as reference, but that wave in that movie is someone's interpretation of reality. So you're kind of taking it one removed. So even though, you know, some things it's impossible to find reference for, like a spaceship crashing or whatever, but or a wave destroying a building. So you do kind of have to look at what's been done before. But for the wave itself, always look at reality, and, you know, let that be your guide. Let images and movies of real things, you know, sort of inform you of what you need to do. There we go. That foam really helps. It thickens it up and makes everything brighter as well. It just gives it, sort of ties everything together, which is really nice. So it's not looking too bad. You know, there's probably a few more things that I would do. Maybe get another sort of layer in there, which is a bit more up in this space. I think could be cool. So let's try that. We'll just add. How long have we got? Oh, I've got about 50 minutes. So I'm just going to add maybe another layer there. From this one, actually duplicate the whole thing again, so I can make changes, and let's have a look. So we got this. I might just change my noise this time to be maybe not quite as stretched. So there we go. Now, so I'll just put it all back to the same frequency. And this one will just give me little dots. Then adjust my ramp. Probably going to do that again, right on the edge like that. Maybe a little bit back. Scatter. Let's add some more roughness to that, maybe. What I might do actually is just decrease the amount of points. That'll just give me a sparser kind of source in general. There we go. Alright, so yeah, it's probably okay. There we go. So having a sparser source will just give me like really thin streams. So I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to increase the sub steps here. 3, 6, and I'm getting very steppy emission here. Just wondering, let's have a look. So I want this to be a bit smoother, this emission. So I just want to check. What's probably happening is because I'm scattering, they're changing every frame. So what I might do here, I think my point count on this wave is not changing. So I'm going to time shift this here and then do my scatter. And then I'm going to use attribute interpolate to transform these points again. So the scatter has on the output attributes tab, primitive num attribute and primitive UV attribute. So source prim and source prim UV. And the attribute interpolate will take those. And if I apply the second input here before the time shift, we should get those points just sort of following along. So what it does is just basically looks at the position of the UV or the primitive UV of where these were scattered onto. As long as these two things match, even though this one's animating and this one isn't, those primitives are the same, it will just stick them to that same position. It's kind of similar to doing a point deform, but a point deform is more based on a point cloud. So this one actually works pretty well, but you can't always use it. So that's when I would use the point deform instead. So that's just going to give me a nice constant point position. And also hopefully, if I check on my animation options, turn off integer frames and set my step to 0.1. If I check that by stepping now, you can see how I'm stepping through the subframes now. I'm on 0.7, 0.8. I'm getting good interpolation of those points. And the scatter is being done on a static object, so they're not jumping around every frame. Now, turn that back to 1. Hopefully what I'll get is, let's just set the inherit to 0. And actually I'll just turn that off. I should see a nice sort of stream coming from these now, especially as I increase my substeps. I should see I get a nice kind of strand of points. Because the substeps are solving in the half frames or the subframes, I need that subframe information, so it's always good to check that on your source. So there we go, we've got nice streams happening. And now we can add a bit of our velocity back in. So we're shooting it up. There we go, we can add some variance. Let's just turn that down. Maybe a little much. I want it to be really kind of together, but the variance is important because otherwise we just get little lines. But even a little bit of variance will give you that kind of spreading out over time. Alright, that's pretty cool. Let's have a look. It's kind of, you don't really see it from this angle, but hopefully if we combine that with everything, time shift, pushing it forwards. Let's get our color on there, set a different color so we can see that. Let's see, what do we got? Yellow. There's our yellow ones in there. We'll have to solve it up to 55. Now this one is slow because of the substeps. So more substeps you give it, the slower that simulation is going to be, because it has to, you know, solve more frequently. Let's see what this one looks like with the old attribute blur technique as well. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Chuck that in the mix. Might just change the scale of that one, make it a bit less. Okay, let's run this through a little more. Waiting, waiting, waiting. So much waiting. To get a bit of variance on this, actually, it might be good to... here we're just setting the velocities all straight up. And that's giving a very uniform result. So what I might do there is just run that through a noise. And then because this noise is going to be swimming, you know, it's just linked to the P position. So as the P position changes, it's going to change that noise. And that will just give a different result, you know, every frame. This will be interesting. I might try this just to see, because this is giving me an up and down noise because of the sine wave, going both negative and positive. But I kind of want to see what that looks like, because it will shoot things forwards as well as backwards, which might be quite interesting. Man, it's slow. Let's just give it 1 and 1, just for testing. It might be enough. And what that multiplication has done is also reduced the magnitude significantly. So I might add a multiplier here and just multiply that back up. Let's see, what do we have? We had about that. Let's go 4. So you can see the variance now anyway. You can definitely see that kind of sine wave happening, but certainly adding variance is, you know, a really good idea. Nothing in nature is, you know, perfectly kind of linear. I think that up and down stuff is maybe a little bit crazy, but yeah, it's kind of interesting. Yeah, I think it's a bit much. Let's make this a three-dimensional noise as well. And if I go alligator, that'll be all upward. Let's see what that looks like. It's a bit more interesting. So I might do that on all of them as well. Got that. Now it's going to be the same noise. So if I just give it a bit of offset, that's like giving a random kind of seed. And I might, let's see, what am I going to do here? I might just put a mix down and mix between the original velocity and this kind of affected velocity. If I promote the bias, then I can kind of control that blend. So that's the noise affected, that's the original. So I can kind of get a blend between those. Maybe 0.5 is fine. Maybe I'll do that over here as well. Actually, this one's taking the original, so that one's okay. Alright, so let's go back and have a look at this. Let's go 3 substeps. Hang in there, Audrey. Maybe one day you'll just wake up and be like able to do everything in Houdini and be like, wow, those streams really paid off. Alright, that's kind of cool. Maybe a bit more upward would be good, but I think, yeah, well, this one was trying to fill in that area of stuff kind of above, so maybe I should turn down the gravity. We'll run it to 55 and see what it looks like at 55, because that was the frame we were rendering. And then we'll just have a look at what that looks like, and I think we'll leave that there, and then I'll see in the last half hour if I can set up a quick little destruction for this. Okay, so let's take a look at that. These ones will probably need to recalculate up to that point as well. Because I changed the velocity, it causes all those pop nets to recalculate. But those ones are a little bit faster, which is good. Okay, time shift is going to step forwards 2 frames, out render. Okay, render. Snapshot. Render. See if we actually got any in that right space that I was trying for. Oh yeah, a little bit. Look at that. Hey, that's not too bad. I was hoping for a little more up here, but yeah, I kind of forgot that what I was trying to do initially and was trying to get something else happening. But I like this. I think this is, just being caused by the variance that I added there with that noise. It's throwing some more, particles in that direction. So I think that's cool. Yeah, it really helps having this line of foam here. So yeah, I think that's all right. So we got all that. That's all looking okay. Okay. Cool. So I'll cache all that to disk. Actually, let's take a look with everything. So go to this mantra and just add in crest foam. And go back to our render view. Mantra 1, render. Have a look at it all together. And eventually I'll split all these things out into separate render passes as well. So I would only do this for testing where I render them all together, just to see and make sure that everything's kind of working. But then ultimately, because I want to be able to control this stuff when I get to comp in Nuke, I need all of these things to be separate passes so that I can tweak the individual passes and really, make it all come together and, adjust things, or if I want to clean out things or adjust the brightness of certain elements and not others, then I really want all these things to be separate so that I can do that. So yeah, it's really kind of important to do that, but for testing it's okay to kind of render all these things together. You can see those nice elements that I was seeing are kind of gone now, but that's okay. So lots of other good things happening. I think maybe like a forward splashing layer would be cool as well, off the crest, like some falling stuff or more of these sort of tendrily fingery elements might be kind of cool as well. So I might try and do that at some point. And if we go back and have a look at what we had, so it's a slightly different frame actually, 53, but you can see all this foamy stuff. This particle scale actually is probably a little big at 2 times, so I might have to reduce that. It's getting there. I definitely will go back and refine some of this stuff. Because, yeah, I do not like these really linear shapes. Look a bit weird. Ah, so impatient. Come on. So once we do the building destruction, you know, this is going to change a lot. It's going to change a lot of stuff because the points are generated from the building. So if we do a building destruction, those buildings are then going to be animated. So we're going to have to change up, or hopefully if we just rerun our pop effects, it may, you know, it may just work, which would be great. Sometimes it is that easy. Oftentimes it's not. But yeah, I think, yeah, let's see what we can do. So that's a cool frame. So what am I going to do? Buildings. Let's have a look. So we're bringing in the test building here. Let's go back to that. So here's our test building. I'm going to isolate this one again, but I'll do it over here. So I'm just going to focus on this one again. There we go. Let's try and just get rid of the ground. Some of these assets are a little bit of a nightmare to kind of work with, and this one looks like it will be, you know, a little bit challenging. Might maybe I'll try and just get rid of this stuff on the ground. You have to get quite, you know, quite good at selecting things in Houdini when you're dealing with assets like this. So there we go. Get rid of that stuff. All right. So there's our building. Now, this is a horrible model in terms of destruction, and it will just, you know, basically if you tried to Voronoi fracture this, it will not work very well. So I recently came up with a kind of good technique for dealing with these buildings that looks kind of cool, which is to just blow it apart based on its faces. So at the moment, let's just, first of all, let's just put an assemble down, pack the geometry, and see how many things we've got. We've got 1,192 pieces. So it has got a whole bunch of different pieces. Let's just put this into a rigid body solver, RVD bullet solver, Sop based one. Set our start frame to 0, plug it in, and turn on ground plane. Let's see, this is slightly below the ground, so I'm going to drop my ground position. 0, 8. Okay, let's see what happens. Save. Oh yeah. So already, job done. But oh, look at that. That's so cool. So there's a lot of really cool stuff going on here, but obviously you can see the biggest issue is that the building is not really falling down. All the little bits that aren't connected to anything have fallen off, and that's great. You know, it's really good to see straight off the bat that we're getting something. But I bet if I come back here and double click, I thought maybe more of this would be connected to each other, but we got some really large pieces here, which are probably contributing to the thing just staying together. Yeah, it's weird. I maybe would have expected more to fall down there. let's try just, you know, just forcing a bit of behavior here. So I'm just going to transform this up. Too much. And I might just rotate it. Ooh. Oh, I guess it's rotating around the world. So I'm going to set this pivot to centroid. I have a little preset for that. It's just $CXCYCZ in the pivot translate, and that allows me to rotate around its centroid. So now I'm just going to drop it maybe like that. I want to see if it breaks up a little more. So let's hit play and see what happens. It's pretty quick to simulate, which is great. Oh, there we go. Hey, that's awesome. So sometimes, you know, you can get away with this. This is very basic. The flaws you can see are huge. You know, they're not breaking, but it's pretty cool. We got these giant beams, and that's potentially something that I might want to deal with. But I'll show you a cool way to deal with that. So, measure. You can see how already that has given me a color display of the small things and the big things. This is giving me an area per element. So what I might do actually is put down a connectivity node first, and this will give me a class attribute. If I have a look at my geometry spreadsheet, it's going to give me a class attribute per connected bit of geometry. So when I run a measure, I can use per piece over class, and that will give me an area of an entire collection of polygons that are connected to each other. And then what I can do is split. So a split is just a way of isolating something, or splitting it off into one side and the other side. If I do, let's see, this is generating a primitive attribute. I'm going to actually generate a point attribute. If I say at area greater than, actually I don't know what it's greater than. Let's go to my geometry spreadsheet and check. 0.5 is the largest value there. So let's go at area greater than 0.4. Group is points. And there are all the pieces that are greater than 0.4. And on the other side, if I invert this, that's all the small pieces, or all the pieces that are less than 0.4. So let's go 0.45 or 0.5. And you can see how some of the pieces disappear. So we've got some larger, slightly larger pieces coming. That maybe, yeah, you can see that is one piece. So now we've got all the larger pieces kind of isolated. Let's have a look at the area again. So we've got some that are 8. That wasn't showing up before. So let's have a look at that. Let's go greater than 5. Aha. There's all our flaws. Greater than 1. 2. There we go, greater than 2 gives us all these pieces. Now what we could do with that is actually fracture just these pieces and see what happens. But I'm not going to do that all at once. What I'm going to do is put a for each loop down. So I'm going to do for each connected piece. And we actually already have a class attribute here, although our one is set to points. So we'll just do another one. And then in each for each loop here, you can see we get one of those pieces. Now this one doesn't have any thickness to it, so with our Voronoi fracture, whoops, scatter, just going to take that down to like 10. You can see the Voronoi fracture does some really weird things because this is not doesn't have any thickness. So I'm going to turn off create interior surfaces, and that is then just going to create the fractures, but it's not going to add any interior surfaces. So it could increase that. Let's go 50. There we go. Jump out, and you can see now we've got all those larger pieces fractured up. I'm going to put an assemble down after that and create a new name attribute and call this, I don't know, fractured geo. And then the other side of my split here is the rest. So I'm going to call this small pieces. Actually, probably for consistency, I'm going to call this large pieces. And then I'm going to merge those together. And then I usually just use an assemble again, turn off name attribute, create pack geometry. Now I have 2,584 pack fragments. Let's run that into our bullet solver, grab our little transform for testing. It's going to be slower. Hopefully we'll see all those larger pieces now break up into a lot more pieces. There's one that hasn't. But you can see all these flaws now breaking. But there are some things in there that are still quite large. But that's pretty cool. Yeah, so these walls are probably going through into the small section. These ones. There you go. So that's quite a large piece. So what we can do is just split again here. And we'll do another area filter for stuff. There we go. Another one. So we'll filter that off. So this one will go through to our small pieces. Although those are still a little bit maybe too large, but that's okay. We can run now. Oops. Go away. That one. We can run that through this again over here. That'll fracture those up. Possibly don't need as many fractures. And what we do, we'll do another assemble. Just call this med pieces, medium. Merge. And let's see what that does. So I'm actually fracturing this time. This is not what I was talking about earlier, where I came up with this way of dealing with buildings like this, but actually this building works pretty well. One of the techniques that I use occasionally, so that's looking great. We're getting a lot of junk there. So one of the techniques that I use sometimes instead of fracturing with a building like this is to actually just split the polygons into their individual faces. So I think I can just do that with a facet. Let's see, I can't quite remember. If I set that to unique points, so if I put an exploded view down, what I should get if I put an assemble down, there we go. Look at that, blows it. So setting unique points will actually disconnect the points from each other and create a unique point per primitive. Whereas usually they're connected. So when you put a name down, it thinks it's all one piece. But when you split it up like that, unique points, when you create the name, then it just turns it into single polygons, which actually works pretty well for things like buildings and spaceships and anything that happens to be kind of, yeah, like a structure, because things don't always break into like organic fractures. They might just separate at the panels. So yeah, that, and it's a really efficient way of dealing with it. So we can try that instead. And we'll probably get a similar result. So you don't always have to Voronoi fracture something, especially when it's like a really dodgy building like this. We actually probably have a lot of pieces now that I've done that actually. So if we have a look, yeah, we've got 26,000 pack fragments now. So it's certainly, because there's a lot of probably small primitives here, it turns each one of these basically into a packed piece. So we should be careful. There you go. So yeah, you do have to be careful with it. So maybe I will Maybe I will leave it as the fracture method for now. This one, let's see, what's this one yielding? That one's giving me 8,000. Anyway, it's just it's another technique. Alright, so RBD bullet solver. What else am I going to do? Constraint geometry. Let's create RBD constraint properties. Glue. I'm going to create a soft constraint here. Let's create a soft constraint here, and now I don't usually use these wrapped up guys very often. Yeah, that's not really working. All right, so what I'm going to do here is create a constraint for this stuff. So we've got our pack fragments here. So before the pack, I'm going to put down a connect adjacent pieces, and that's going to give me a kind of glue network. Just primitives, basically, connecting one geometry to another, or one differently named piece to another. I'm going to choose, so pieces from surface points actually is the kind of glue network. So there's some wacky stuff going on over here. Pieces from points is what I am going to use, because I'm going to create a soft constraint. Take the search radius right down. So I just want to kind of get, you can see, you can't even see them. So you turn on the point display and it tells you a bit clearer where they are. What this is going to give me with a really low search radius is just where the corners of two pieces are connecting. And I'm going to run that through an attribute wrangle. Set to primitives. And I need two attributes here, which the constraints inside the bullet solver are going to use. And they are s@constraint underscore name. And I'm just going to give this a name like soft. And s@constraint underscore type. And I'm going to set the type to all for starters. And that refers to the type of constraint, like whether it's a position or a rotational constraint or both. So this is both. It's primitive attribute, that's very important. I'll run that into my constraint geometry input. And let's go to constraints. We've got soft. The data name is soft, but I called it soft with a lowercase s. I could change that, or I could change this. Soft. And let's see what happens now. It's weird there. Oh, I'm doing that off the non-rotated building. Let's just rotate these as well. There we go. Let's see what happens. Oh, that's one thing. You can see it's doing some weird stuff right at the start. I need to turn on rest length. And that will give me the length of each primitive there. It's really small. Very small. But it's important because the soft constraint uses that to pull the constraint back if it stretches too long. So save, hit play. Then you can see we don't get that weirdness at the start. Now the stiffness by default is just 1, so this might be a kind of weird springy effect. Let's see. You can see those constraints there. But what it's doing is holding everything together. So you end up with this, effect of deformation a little more. The stiffness is really weak at the moment, so it's all just kind of melting and being a big puddle, but you can see it holds it all together a little bit, which is interesting. And let's increase the stiffness. If I put that up, let's go 50. It's going to be slower with constraints. It's another thing that you have to solve, and the more points you have for those constraints, or the more primitives, the slower it will be. But it's definitely worth it because it gives you a really good look. Ah, there we go. So the really high stiffness, holds it together a lot, and it gives you that kind of, there's a lot of really interesting things happening there. So I think this is working pretty well. Cool. Alright, so I think I'm going to need to do this the proper way rather than just using the SOP-based bullet solver, because I probably want to do a lot more complex things with this. So I'm going to put a .NET down and just rebuild this from scratch. So bullet solver, RBD packed object, and actually I might use a rigid body solver, which is a bullet solver or an RBD solver. RBD basically never use bullet, but it has these extra inputs which will be useful for various things later on. So I'll use that one instead. So it's still a bullet solver, it just is wrapped up into a little tool, but it has these extra inputs for pre-solve and post-solve. I'll have gravity. And here I'll just set that to bring in my first input. Oops. First context, there we go. And what else? Oh, our constraints. So here I'm going to create null and say out constraint or out soft con, something like that. Put down a constraint network. Put down a soft, what is it? Bullet soft constraint relationship. Set that to that same name, soft. Stiffness, maybe we can set that to 30 or something. Ground plane. Merge. There we go. Ground plane on here was negative 0.8. Do the same thing. 0.08. Okay, so there we go. Now that should, in theory, if I do that same thing, that should in theory give me a very similar result. I guess the stiffness on these maybe, or maybe, oh, I haven't given this a, haven't given that an input, so that's why the constraints aren't working. Let's just do that. First context, second context, there we go. See, it's a bit slower with the constraints on. And yeah, there we go. So that's working pretty well. Now, let's get rid of the transforms. And what I'm going to do here on the packed pieces from the ground, I'm just going to create a group based on points with a bounding region. So I'm going to use a bounding box. My bounding box is over here. So I'm just going to transform that over here. Make it about the size of the building. And I'm going to call this inactive group. Underscore. Then an attribute wrangle, I'm going to say at active, I at active, it's an integer attribute. I at active equals 1. And then in a second attribute wrangle, I'm just going to choose the inactive group and set that to 0. So that will deactivate these pieces here. Then in my simulation, under RBD packed object, create active attributes. It will be active, but these pieces will be set to inactive. So what I should see if I put a pop force down, now this is the reason I use the RBD body solver, so I can plug in things like pop forces. If I set a, what's our direction for our camera here? If I set a -5 in X, you can see how this building is kind of being blown over, but the bottom is inactive, so it's not, yeah, it can't basically do anything. It's not solving. It works as a collision for the other pieces, but yeah, it won't do anything. Cool, so that's good. Now, actually, what I might do is I'm going to do this. I'm going to set active to 0 for everything. I'm going to keep that group there because that's important. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put down a Sop Solver, and this is the other reason I use this rigid body solver. And I'm going to object merge my wave in. So I'll go all the way back to wave, out wave. Hey, there it is. And I think this doesn't hit until around frame 39. So I'm going to, or 40. So I'm going to set my start frame to 39. Sop Solver. So there's my building. Here's my wave. And this is inactive at this point. So what I'm going to do is transfer to, from, I'm going to set an active attribute on this wave, which means nothing to the wave, but I'm just transferring it onto something it does mean something to. So I at active equals 1, and I'm going to transfer active from the wave to the building. So if I create a marker for that, active, text, I should, in theory, sometimes it actually doesn't really display very well on packed geometry. So might work, might not. Oh, there it goes. Sometimes you need to play with it a little bit. You can see all those zeros turning to ones. So as this wave comes through, it's going to activate those pieces. So I want this distance not to be that great. Let's go 1. You'll see as that wave goes through, it transfers that 1 onto those pieces. All right, so let's run this and see what happens. Frame 39 is our starting point. Just going to hide the ground plane so I can zoom a bit easier. Let's look at the camera. Okay, so yeah, let's see what happens. I've still got this pop force in here, and that's just going to be blowing things forwards, but it won't be blowing them forward until they activate. So we should see, as I play through, should start to see the top of the building activating. As this wave is kind of going through, it's going to be this accumulation sort of effect. And it's going to wipe through and activate the whole thing. You can kind of see it there. It starts at the top. And then these subsequent pieces are activating. And it's even activating the bottom, which is kind of okay. But I sort of did want to preserve that. So I'm going to put that attribute wrangle right at the bottom here. And I'm just going to choose inactive group and say I at active equals 0. And that'll just make sure that that one stays 0. Because it's setting it every frame in the Sop Solver. All right. So the other thing that I can do, I've got 4 minutes left, is I've got my wave. My wave has velocity. Lots of velocity. Let's transfer velocity to these as well from the wave. See what that looks like. Boom, look at that. And because of these soft constraints, you get this really cool kind of pulling effect because everything's constrained to itself and staying attached. We're not breaking these constraints at the moment. So it's a bit of a banana building, but it looks really cool. So let's have a look through the camera. It's a bit crazy. I mean, you know, we need to change it certainly, but let's just jump out. Just hit escape and hide all these things. Let me just set it to manual and turn all this stuff off for a second. Turn my wave back on. Cool banana building, that's right. So where did I do all this in? I can't remember where. Oh, BG buildings. There we go. So on mouse up. There's our banana building. There's our wave. Turn off spray foam. Oh, not that one. This one. There we go. Okay, so there you go. You can see we're not even doing any collision. But because we're transferring the velocity of the wave, it looks like it's colliding. And it's activating right at the moment that the wave touches it. And it kind of, yeah, it gives you that kind of feeling of it being kind of caught in a wave, which is actually kind of cool. When you combine it with the wave, it actually doesn't look too bad as a banana. And, you know, the wave's going to crash down and hide a lot of that stuff anyway. So maybe we don't really need to worry about breaking those constraints. We might want to, yeah, maybe push that stuff a little more. Maybe activate it a little sooner so that it, you know, it gets a little bit more of a push on it. Breaking, oh, I think I just crashed. Fatal error. Oh no. Well, that's a good time to wrap up, I guess, because it's going to take me a while to load this stuff again. But that's pretty funny. I think I will wrap it up there. We are pretty much out of time anyway. But you know, I think that's a really good kind of yeah. Don't worry, I saved and really this temporary file that is created. I'll show you. I'll open a new Houdini. The temporary files that get created on Crash are actually usually really good. Unless it's a hard crash where it doesn't throw this Houdini error file, what you can do is just open from the temp directory here. You can see there it is there. Just crashed. It's 3.21 megabytes, which is a good sign. If it was like kilobytes, it's probably not a good sign. But that looks good. Let's open it. And yeah, you know, there we are. Back to the start. Now what you would need to do, because this is all has relative references to my hip location, my original save location, is I would need to go back and save it to the location of where it was originally, and then all these references will work again. So yeah, the crashes, you know, crash files are usually great in Houdini. Anyway, yeah, let's wrap it up and we'll keep going next week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the stream, and I'm glad you learnt a lot, Hardik. That's great. Let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to post comments in the YouTube. Yeah, we'll keep going with this and just see where it goes and add. There's lots in this scene, as you can see. So, you know, there's lots of work to do in terms of adding destruction to all these elements, and there'll be some other elements that we can do some really cool things with. Yeah, lots of cool stuff. Thanks, Audrey. You too. Have a great week, guys. Please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and check out the other streams that are going on CG Spectrum right now. There's lots of really cool content. So yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys every week, and I hope you guys have a great week. See you, everybody.